Not every creative decision in movies is the right one. From the outside, we fans can usually spot a stinker from a mile off, even when we're not talking franchises or characters with any kind of longevity. And for filmmakers to not see where they've messed up and missed out on a way better movie by such a small margin is sadly frustrating. Luckily though, we're here to point it all out because we're awful like that. Don't get me wrong, there are some absolute stone-cold classics in this list all the same, but nothing's ever quite perfect. Sometimes even an absolute gem can still be given a big enough polish to make it shine that much brighter. Regardless, like all bad nerds, we here at What Culture are just convinced we know better. My name is Adam Cleary, and these are 10 key changes we wish recent movies had made. Number 10, treat Nick Fury's eye injury better, Captain Marvel. Full of energy, happy-go-lucky, not even that cynical and chock full of the hashtag bants, the Nick Fury of Captain Marvel was not the same man we met in Iron Man. The setup seemed to be that he was going to go through something that would steal his mettle and make him this more stoic figure in the future. We'd even been ominously teased about it, as a future Fury had said last time he trusted somebody, it cost him his eye. How dark and mysterious was that? And then in Captain Marvel, it turns out that his eye is just scratched out by an alien cat thing as a bit of a gag. All that set up, and it's a nonsense, silly answer that didn't in any way tune into why Fury was so different. It added nothing to the film, and it robbed him of a key development that should have been there in a serious, reverent way. Number 9, leave out the kids. It too. Now, just full disclosure, I really liked It too, but it's a film so intensely in awe of its own nostalgic eye that its focus is entirely uneven. It's not just that that nostalgia is aimed at the Losers Club's past, it's a nostalgia for its own predecessor, which came out less than 2 years earlier. So this weird result is that we get a film that spends way too long retelling the same story as the first under the guise of exploring memories forgotten to trauma. And while hands up, that is a solid enough idea, it comes at a cost, as most of the adult cast are undernourished and feel like second-class characters to their younger counterparts. The best solution, though admittedly a little savage, would have been to cut the youngsters entirely and focus on them as adults. No matter how good the cast were, and yes, the cast were really good, when they get in the way of the narrative progress of the film, that's a problem. It basically just needed a much firmer editing hand. Number 8, change the ending. Yesterday. Yeah, this is a weird film. Not just because of who made it and when, but because it had some very weird stipulations to its own parallel universe that may or may not have been an alternate universe at all. It's never really made clear. The biggest issue for Yesterday, though, is the ending, which should have been made a little more conventional. In films like this, where the hero wakes up in an alternate world and learns a lesson, they're usually invited to return to their own reality to live out those lessons. In Yesterday, Jack reveals his Beatles theft after meeting John Lennon, who it turns out gave up his own dreams for love and a boring life and tells him to do the same to find true happiness. At that point, Jack should then just go back to the world where the Beatles existed. This would make Lennon some magical guardian angel figure and give the movie a happy ending on 2 levels. Not only does he get to be happy, but we get a world where the Beatles and Harry Potter all still exist. Sure, I mean, that's not a happy ending for me because both those things suck, but it's not my film, so whatever. Number 7, kill Buzz, Toy Story 4. Every Toy Story film so far has been about the fear of mortality, and yet not one character has died. But Pixar make kids' films, Adam, you incorrectly whine. They can't just murder a character. Really? Can't they? You want to maybe tell that to Nemo's mother or Bing Bong and Ellie, you idiot? Toy Story 4 should have been more brutal in telling the end of Woody's story, and it could have served Buzz, its most underused character, way better by just killing him off. For 4 movies, Woody has been wrestling with this shapeless fear presented as one of abandonment or redundancy, and in the end, Toy Story 4 lets him get beyond that by having him get rejected again. What it should have done is remind Woody that his real fear is rooted in dying. What better way to do that than having his best friend, who's been neglected to second stringer by now anyway, killed off? It would have had way more impact, made way more sense, and given Buzz an ending all of his own. Number 6, save Walker, Mission Impossible Fallout. The performance might well have cost Justice League everything, but Henry Cavill's turn as Agent Walker in Mission Impossible Fallout was a revelation. Away from Superman's Boy Scout sensibilities, he was meaner, arguably even more hulking, and way more of a badass. Crucially though, he gave Ethan Hunt the formidable opponent he's lacked for a while. Up until then, Hunt had been facing an organization with interesting subordinates, but had never really had someone of equal standing to fight. Walker turned up, tore up this script, and should have been allowed to return in another outing. He was just the kind of bad guy fans could really rally behind, and having him return with an even bigger chip on his shoulder would have been wonderful. Killing him off was a mistake that could easily have been avoided. Number 5, just don't make it in the first place. Gemini Man. Yep, that's it. That's all I've got. Number 4, lose the other symbiote, Venom. For all its success and the praise leveled at Tom Hardy for his performance as Eddie Brock and Venom, the first standalone in Sony's Spider-Verse was a bit of a mess. You can all get out of the comments right now, though. I honestly loved this film, but it was still a bit muddled, presented weirdly, and full of superfluous supporting characters. What do you mean, just like what culture? We're all great. Unfortunately, it just didn't work with all those symbiotes, especially Riz Ahmed and Riot, who was presented as the film's big bad. The performance is pretty good, I'll admit, given the material, but Carlton Drake is a non-character who doesn't really fit this whole mad scientist mold, and using so many of them at once is just wasteful. Rather than shooting that particular load all over itself, the first film should have cut its losses, knowing that Venom was just going to overshadow absolutely everybody else, and gone with a human antagonist interested in capturing Brock. Then you can leave the appearance of other symbiotes to the sequel, starting with Carnage, who was of course teased in the post-credits anyway. Number 3, bring Arnie back substantially, the Predator. In Shane Black's hands, Predator should have been a nostalgic, knowing nod to the original that cut loose all the silliness and some of the lore around the iconic alien hunter. It didn't do that though, and ended up having a bizarre message about autism that was fumbled more awkwardly than a sweaty octopus trying to unhook a bra. Don't get me wrong, that could have stayed in though if they'd gone with a third act twist to really dial up the nostalgia. As was revealed after the film came out, Black's team had approached Arnold Schwarzenegger for a cameo, but he turned it down because in his eyes it was too meager. I've actually got quite a simple solution to that one, guys, if you'll just hear me out for 1 second. How about you offer him something proper to do? The film should have revealed the Predator killer suit in the run-up to the climax, but it should have done so by having Dutch wear it. Imagine the audience reaction to having Arnie back killing Predators one last time. It's the kind of nostalgic sugar this film aimed for, and somehow completely fudged. Number 2, focus more on NIKKI'S Diaries, The Dirt. Much like Pamela Anderson's sex tape, it's pretty fair to say that while The Dirt was unevenly received by critics, it was still a riot for Motley Crue fans. Their story was easily one of the most notorious in the entire history of rock and roll, and seeing that given true reverence with a good cast and Netflix power behind it was a real surprising high point. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't flawless by any means, but it was a damn sight better than it's currently being given credit for. That said though, what would have served it much better is a little less mythologizing and a little more raw emotion. We get it, Motley Crue are outrageous legends, but the real story was the darker stuff. We get to see some of that, yes, particularly around Vince Neil, but Tommy Lee's issues were mostly glossed over, and Nikki Sixx's struggles with heroin addiction were only briefly touched upon. If you, like me, have read Sixx's haunting heroin diaries, there is a far more compelling, far more important story in there that was largely missing from The Dirt. Still, though, that means it is an open goal for somebody to adapt, and if you're listening to this with a multi-million-dollar budget burning a hole in your back pockets, maybe do it. Number 1, send Bucky back with Cap, Avengers Endgame. Yes, I'm still not over it, and Endgame was almost the perfect way to sign off the Infinity Saga, and definitely a great way to end the stories of both Captain America and Iron Man. But still. In more than one case, the film pushes important characters aside in order to give these two more space. It's understandable, I guess, but that's why we didn't get a memorial for Black Widow, and it's also probably why nobody seemed to care that Bucky Barnes, a man whose story mirrors Cap's at almost every turn, was just left there in the future. Endgame should have reunited Cap and Bucky for one last mission, returning the Infinity Stones and then deciding between them to choose to stay in the past. That way, Cap doesn't look like such a dick for just disregarding how much Bucky might also have wanted to live his stolen life. Now, yes, that would sort of make the upcoming Falcon and Winter Soldier show basically just a thing about a crime-fighting, flying man with a big shield and his formerly murderous senior citizen best friend, but I'd watch that. So there you have it, those are 10 key changes we wish recent movies had made. Let us know what you'd have gone for in the comments below, and of course don't forget to like, share and subscribe. In the meantime though, thank you so much for watching. I have of course been Adam Cleary, a man practically perfect in every way. Big asterisks, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.